the most famous steps in the world, linking the Black Sea to the heart of the city of Odessa. It was here the Russian Revolution started, a revolution which changed the world in so many ways.
192 steps and 10 balustrades. Yes.
80 years later, another revolution. Well, sort of revolution is on the way because experts from around the world have gathered here to discuss and plan the way to breathe the life of religion and science back into a dying sea. In the spirit of Jason and the Argonauts, we set out in search of the golden fleece of understanding. A modern Argo, in the guise of a roll-on, roll-off car ferry, was to carry us through the heavy traffic of troubled waters.
I think the best way for religions to enter into dialogue is with reference to some subject other than religion itself, in this case the environment. I think religions can be brought nearer to each other when there is a subject that concerns the whole of humanity, rather than the scholastic, theological and dogmatic differences between the churches. Therefore, in addition to what His Holiness said about academic dialogues taking place, I believe that the real intervention, as you called it, is taking place through conferences like this.
And in terms
For the Muslim, each generation of humankind is ethic bound to leave behind a wholesome, sustainable environment. Each day was spent at work, plenary sessions, workshops, and of course discussions, with sure leave to gain the enlightenment of local understanding.
Around 30 years ago, the Black Sea was a sea of prosperity. It was a sea which had united civilizations over some thousands of years. Those same civilizations, through their own pattern of consumption, have put so much pressure on this amazing environment that it has started to collapse. The first symptoms about 100 years ago, when people moved along its shores because they wanted to enjoy its beaches and build houses on its shores, were that the seal population started to disappear. That was over 100 years ago. More recently, the large amount of nitrogen and phosphorus flowing down the rivers has caused a remarkable and very rapid change in the ecosystems of the Black Sea. This system became overcharged. Lots of small organisms called phytoplankton started to grow, blocked the light which reaches these meadows, and they started to die. They started to decay away. Those meadows, people didn't understand this at the time, were introducing oxygen into that part of the sea. They were like the lungs of the sea, and suddenly the sea was deprived of its lungs. And then, just to make things worse, the collapse of the fisheries. In 1990, the fisheries started to collapse in the Black Sea, and we started to lose what was a major fishing area. So it was a pretty depressing sight for the people who were around the Black Sea, and there was a cry for help.
The Maidan, living heart of this ancient city. And as Trebizond has grown and shrunk and grown again, this space has remained an open place in which people of every creed, colour and kind have come to discuss the past and plan for the future. Why, even the trees tell us about the cosmopolitan nature. All cedars from Lebanon, hornbeams from the mountain, and even a gum tree all the way from Australia. About a kilogram of anchovy, enough for a hearty meal for 5. Now, in the past, 1 billion kilograms of these small fish went on an annual pilgrimage around the Black Sea. And as they went, they grew and they fed the people on the shoreline. And so rich were these fisheries that people came from far and wide to feast upon the bounty. And this is turkey salad.
Yes, this is Turkish salad.
And what's the difference between that and Greek salad?
Just the name.
Just the name. Right, now have I got it right? The anchovy is hamsi?
Yes, hamsi.
Now this dish has been prepared. What's that called?
It's hamsi kusho, means anchovies.
You see, if we can get the combined wisdom of everyone on this cruise, on this conference together, and then get people to act to solve the problems, the anchovies from the Black Sea could feed the world. 1 billion kilograms of anchovies could provide 40 million people with one protein-rich meal a week throughout their lives. Carried out sustainably, that would mean fewer meals, but forever and ever. That's, of course, if you like anchovies. But the way they cook them in Trebizond, there's no argument at all. Bellamy in Georgia, wettest place in the Black Sea, now under attack by all the problems of our throwaway society. Here, torrential rain washes into the local rivers, already so polluted and altered they've lost fine runs of salmon and sturgeon, which used to be fished in plenty. A turbulent history, for here many religions, Muslim, Christian, Jewish, have worked side by side in peace, as today they are working on this ship. The Dolphinarium at Bellamy. This place used to roar with applause as the dolphins cavorted and entertained the visitors. Now, of all the species in the Black Sea, the dolphin is one of the most endangered. And there are plans to refurbish this place, not to entertain the visitors, but to look after those dolphins, perhaps bring those which are most endangered in the most polluted area and care for them here. And of course there's argument, because some people say that is cruel, they should be left to die, perhaps we should put them to sleep. While others say no, they should be rehabilitated, because perhaps one day when we come to our senses, they can be let back into a clean sea.
Entire economies of countries have collapsed. That is a pretty big disaster for the population of those countries, but in fact it's a respite for the environment, because if you can't operate your industries, then they don't pollute. If you can't apply fertilizers to your fields, then you don't get nitrogen and phosphorus running down the Danube into the Black Sea. And there is evidence, there is in fact some quite convincing evidence that some of the communities in the Black Sea have started to recover. And that surprised all of us.
Good news indeed. The spirit of the youth of Georgia dances into a brighter future. No oars, no human slaves are rowing our great galley, but we like the cars that usually transport, are slaves of oil, agent of power and pollution, driving us onwards to our next port of call. This is Russia's only major port on the Black Sea coast. What of its future? Prosperity or pollution? The white scar of the Portland cement works in the harbour of Novorossiysk, which means New Russia, almost as it was back in 1920 when ships of many nations evacuated the armies of White Russia and so saw the end of the Russian Revolution and the birth of the USSR. Now, much has changed in those 70+ years since that evacuation. The USSR is no more, but still the riches of that great tract of land are there for export, and this is now the main route, the umbilicus of the trade, especially in oils, and the whole place is changing very rapidly. But will those changes help to solve the problems of the Black Sea, or will they exacerbate them further? That is one of the questions which must be answered by this conference. Dolphins performing once more in another dolphin area near Novorossiysk, saved from a death in a polluted sea, or simply having to sing for their supper. Or are they, like the monk seal, just heading for extinction?
It's distressing to me to see the condition they're in, and I suspect they don't have the money for veterinary help. And the food, I don't know if, frozen herring is good food.
Is this now,
Complete.
is this just a peep show for tourists, or is it a rehabilitation centre?
I don't know. I think it was for tourists. I don't know why they're still keeping the animals here. There is no educational material here at all. How can people learn to love these as living things as opposed to artifacts, toys, if there's nothing here to tell them about what dolphins are and why they're important?
I know one facility, only one facility in the Black Sea now, 20 volunteers there who rescue and rehabilitate animals now, without any funding. You have to help these animals, to rescue them and then to release them into the wild. Captive animals which were in captivity for a long time, they should be rehabilitated. And some of them, healthy animals, should be released.
The bric-a-brac on any seashore around the world can tell as much. And this is a very special story. Here are seaweeds washed up. Now, once there were thousands of square kilometres of seaweed, mainly red but some brown, growing out there. And as they grew in the clear water, they charged the surface of the Black Sea with life-giving oxygen. But since pollution has come this way and the waters are now so enriched with phosphate and nitrate, the microscopic plankton grows so thickly that the light can no longer penetrate down to the floor of the sea, and these have died out. A major source of the oxygen has gone. Now here, a tiny scrap of land, the Bolshoi Ultrish Nature Reserve, well, things are just hanging on. Here, both on the land and the sea, are many species, many different sorts of plant and animals which now occur nowhere else. 25 kilometres upstream from here, they're going to build an oil terminal. That oil terminal is going to change the way of life, but it could destroy this place forever.
Больше этого дерева нигде не растет у нас на земном шаре.
Nowhere else can these trees grow. Only here from Varvarovka you came through it till this place. It's about 12 kilometers.
Поэтому нарушение экологического...
If this scrap of ancient forest is lost, the only living record of these birds will be through these golden teeth. Save the reserve and there'll be local jobs in the tourist industry forever. Like the dolphins, these once proud ships plied a trade of oceanographic research. No longer funded by the government, they now have to earn a living in more overloaded ways. Will the new oil boom bring hope for the dolphins and the researchers, or will it simply hasten them on the route to extinction? Lose either and the Black Sea is in even more peril, as are the lives of all who depend on it. The people of Yalta come to greet these touring Argonauts. Holy days, holidays. Yalta is a resort without equal. Many hotels and convalescent homes for the rich and the great. One of the tourist hotspots of the world. A place of rejuvenation for body and soul.
Remarkable castle, which belonged to the Governor General of the Crimea in the first half of the 19th century. The master of the place was extremely rich. He possessed 80,000 serfs or peasant slaves. Slavery or serfdom was abolished in Russia in 1861. Practically the same year saw the abolition of slavery in the United States.
Many civilizations have passed this way, and many great events have unfolded here. Freshest in many memories is the Yalta Conference, when 3 elderly men met to unite the world in peace and sadly erected a curtain of iron.
This was the place where the meetings of the Allied powers took place. 8 sessions of the Yalta Conference. They say that this fireplace was heated for the first time for the participants of the conference since the Tsars had left the palace.
This is the garden where Winston Churchill, President Roosevelt and Joseph Stalin came and posed for that famous picture after the signing of all the agreements of the Yalta Conference, which brought to the end the Second World War, but some would say started the Third World War, the war on the environment. St. Augustine said that paradise is a place where trees are growing. And Yalta, despite its turbulent history, still has its trees and almost has that peace and tranquility. The cars have come, but it's still a health resort and a holiday resort which has hardly been touched by the 20th, let alone the 21st century. But those high-rise hooligans who've already destroyed so many of the resorts, the landscapes and the sustainable lifestyles around the Mediterranean are out there waiting in the wings. So what will tourism bring for Yalta? Could it be its saviour or could it lead to further destruction? Handled in the right way, the profit from this new venture could pave the way to a brighter future. Handled in the wrong way, it could lead to greater division between rich and poor.
There has been, in the last 2 or 3 years, a tremendous return to Black Sea beaches and Black Sea coast. And there again, the tourists find themselves frustrated because the infrastructure definitely is worn and run down. And the feeling is that they would now be in a situation to compare and by comparison be able to pay a little bit more for the services which they could afford in the Black Sea. And there is some evidence that some people are constructing new hotels, but we hope that this can be done in a more orderly and organized way so that they don't wreck the environment by building cheap construction everywhere, and that they invest in municipalities so that the local community also benefits with such things as technology for improving sewage treatment, for example. And they don't end up with running the whole tourist industry down, which occurs in so many countries in development, that you have a thriving tourist industry, but it's actually feeding off the local environment and it runs down market, and you end up with cheaper and cheaper package tours until the place is completely messed up.
This idea of welfare, or what some people have called a goodness function, is an area where physical science and religion can really come together.
I have an article which is available for you here, which explains in great detail why world trade, where the protection of the environment is impossible.
Man can't even be conceived without the animals, nor can the animals be conceived without man.
What the GATT agreements have done to us is create a world free trade zone. A world in which there are no longer any laws to protect society, to protect labor, or to protect the environment.
Nature is valuable, certainly, and we should do what we can to preserve nature, but so are people, and people's needs cannot be fully harmonized with the needs of nature. So we are faced with the business of weighing the needs of people against the needs of nature, and we cannot give up on that.
Many resources of the environment are scarce, but not information.
Religion and science both address the mystery and the wonder of the created world and all those within it.
The Black Sea and its drainage area can only be managed under specific conditions. These conditions, the most important of these conditions, is the impact of our destructive economic activities in this area is limited and cannot just go on increasing indefinitely. So the limit is probably already being achieved, but that is for Lawrence, me, and others to decide.
Science is in fact exploring how the world works. Religion is trying to interpret the question, why are we here?
The present global economy, as it is managed by the World Trade Organization, is simply unacceptable, and we've got to say that. If we don't say that, we're wasting our time.
What people have to understand is that all of their opportunities, for example, their opportunities for their own development as a community, depend on improving their own environment and protecting it. And that message is gradually getting across. We don't expect anybody to take out a huge bank loan to protect the environment, but we expect them, when they're taking out a bank loan to develop their own economic activities, such as tourism, to include in that a component which will enable the environment to be protected, because it makes good business sense.
The port, the sea terminal, was constructed in 1967 as if in the shape of a ship, with a captain's bridge in the middle, you know, as if the ship is leaving the port. It was designed in such a way as to make the entrance to the sea.
In the last century, it was true to say that on every day in the year, 40% of the population of Odessa were rich tourists. No wonder it was right here that the unpaid crew of the battleship Potemkin sparked off the Russian Revolution. A revolution that was meant to heal the rift between rich and poor.
The three most powerful symbols in the Bible, when we are thinking about the end, that's to say the purpose of God's creation, are the garden, the city, and the meal. The Bible is set symbolically in a garden at the beginning, the garden in which man is the steward, the one who has to care for it, and not its master. And that means the whole of creation. The city, for the Bible, ultimately will be the city of God, a place whose beauty we can't begin to conceive, and where all men and women will live in peace. And the meal, the banquet, is the great feast in the kingdom, where there will be no false distinctions of any kind between male and female, black and white, rich and poor. And I think those three symbols of the garden, the city, and the meal give one all one needs in thinking about the care of this one earth that we have.
White acacia trees, the symbol of the city of Odessa, because these trees are the friends of the people here. They provide them with shade throughout the long hot summer and wonderful blossom early in the year, and they do it without using very much water. You see, the acacias have learnt water conservation a long time ago. And Odessa always has had problems with its water supply. Not enough? Why, even today, the water that comes out from the tap must be boiled for at least 15 minutes before it is safe to drink.
Places like Odessa, absolutely gorgeous places, but they're under enormous threat. Their sewage systems don't work. We need partnerships with local people. We need policies which require employment of local people. People here need jobs. Fundamentally, they need jobs if they're going to address the issues of the environment. Tourism employs 1 in 9 people in the world, and this has all the ingredients of wonderful tourism. There's 160 million people within short commuting distance, 1 day's commuting distance of it. It's got wonderful beaches, it's got beautiful seas, lovely landscapes, enormous history and really wonderful history. I'm sure it can be a generator of jobs which are non-destructive in the environment.
The conference crew of our battleship had nothing to grumble about except the workload. But the feeling of hopelessness grew as we heard more and more about the unpaid scientists, teachers, and even doctors and nurses. Across the mouth of the Danube Delta, one of the world's most important wetlands, no wonder tourists flock to discover the wonders of this biosphere reserve. A boatload of reeds gathered from the wetlands of the Danube Delta and being taken on shore to be used to thatch the houses. Now this is part of the process that has gone on for thousands of years. Down comes the water and all the nutrients of phosphate and nitrate are stripped as it passes through the great kidneys of the Danube, soaked up by the reed, by the algae, by all the other plants. And then people have always used some of those plants. They've taken the fish, but they've also used the plant for thatching, for making bricks, for any job. And so the nutrients have been moved out back onto the land. So you see, people have played a part in the whole nutrient recycling of Europe. It's not something we've invented, it's something nature has perfected over thousands and thousands of years. Sadly, recent decades have done their worst to destroy the resources of this great wetland, the kidneys of much of Central Europe. In the words of the President, what we can and should do is to use science more efficiently to ecological ends. Romania is and will always be in the first line of this struggle. So we left Romania, a nation in transition, heading towards the problems or the potentials of a free market economy. Varna, designed by some of the world's best landscape architects, playground for the rich, but it's now seeing the regrowth of shipbuilding to swell the fleets that will carry oil and other riches from the Black Sea to the hungry stock market of a waiting world. Think what modern communications could do to help teach these people more about the problems of the environment and their solutions through the grace of God.
It's important to have people who are full of wisdom, of knowledge, of science, of greater dimensions of life to come together. But it's quite important for me that all of us should look down to earth and see the connections between fishes and human beings, between water and oxygen. I kept thinking the whole time in the greatness of life and how life is so splendid, how creation is so generous, and yet people are not breathing well, not eating well, not sleeping well, because it's maybe something serious is missing. Respect for life, tenderness for the little ones. Because when a child comes to the world, she or he comes asking questions. So if you want to see a renewal for the Black Sea, for societies, for the world, we have to pay close attention to the little ones.
Na zdrowie! Na zdrowie! And so it came to pass that some stalwart Argonaut decided to join me to test the purity of the water for themselves. Now, it isn't quite solid here. We're told it's polluted, but it is safe to swim.
The quality of water as a recreational potential is good, but for the marine organisms, there are some dangerous periods during the summer post-blooming period when the oxygen deficiency causes mass mortality of some more sensitive organisms.
Washed up dead on the beach.
Yes.
But you swim here most days when you're in Varna?
Yes, I swim.
Отлично было просто. Все замечательно. Вода теплая, хорошая, прелесть. Please try.
Well, all that safe and sound. But as we've heard, the living systems of the Black Sea aren't that safe. But perhaps if all the agreements and the propositions which will come from this conference are put into action as quickly as possible, then we can breathe the life of both religion and science back into this dying sea. Peace with the living earth. The root of the Arabic word for Islam means peace. Hectic days of enlightenment, but our voyage of discovery was soon to come to an end. It was here in the past that two of the world's great monotheistic religions, Islam and Christianity, met in conflict. The waters of the Golden Horn are very, very rich today as they were then, and so the fishers of men have turned into the fishers of fish. And it's a good catch as long as you have the gear and the patience. The miracle of the conference isn't just the meeting of the two mindsets, religious and scientific, but the best news we've had is that the anchovies are returning in their millions. And here is the proof. Straight out of the sea onto the grill. This is fast food with a vengeance. Fish kebab. Thanks to the demise of the communist regime with its industry and large farms, the collective load of pollution and eutrophication is getting less. The Black Sea in all its biodiversity is responding once again.
It will never be restored to the environment which it was before. Quite simply because we're already seeing things disappear. The poor old monk seal, which has been steadily declining, nobody knows if there are any left. Maybe there are no monk seals. It's become one of those almost mythical animals now in the Black Sea. If that animal's lost, it doesn't matter how much we invest in the Black Sea, it will not return. It's lost. We will, I'm sure, with the cooperation of everybody, and everybody means everybody, not just the people who live around it, but all of those people who are contributing to its problems or benefiting from it. If everybody contributes, you will end up with a Black Sea which people will again be proud of and will support a healthy environment and an ecosystem which people's grandchildren will be proud of. But it won't happen tomorrow. It will happen through a gradual process of awakening and awareness that what we have, we're about to lose. And if we lose it, we won't get it back.
υπάρχει ειρήνη και αγάπη και ενότης εις όλων των κόσμων. Αμήν.